What's good, team, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to share with you the 5 steps I discovered to take my websites from looking like this. I mean, look at these shadows, the color contrast, absolutely appalling, to looking like this. Absolutely stunning, beautiful websites, professional, top of the line, sleek, and stylish. So yeah, if you do everything I say in this video, you too can become a CSS god. And if you don't immediately smash the like button, you will be cursed by the CSS goblins to have bad websites for 10 years. No pressure. So the first of the 5 things on our list that you need to do to become a CSS god is actually pretty obvious, and it's just practice. Now I know that sounds stupid, but I'm literally going to show you the difference some practice makes. Here are some websites that I made when I was first learning to code. Now if I go ahead and log in, just really take a second to appreciate the UI, the user interface, how terrible the shadows are. You know, I know we showed this earlier, some of the modals, nothing closes, absolutely appalling. Then if we take a look at the next one, once again, really basic, looks super average, terrible. Here we have a portfolio. I mean, this one doesn't actually look too bad in fairness, but it's just very simple, very plain. If we take a look at the next one, another portfolio, I was addicted to them. Look at how very mediocre all this stuff is. This is when I was all getting into it. Here's another one. I actually like this one. This is a cool effect, to be fair. The hover, all the icons glow up, but just super average. The color schemes are all over the place. The user interface is just a shock horror. Whereas nowadays, like, you know, the websites just look much cleaner. Everything looks more professional. That's one example. Here's another one, you know, just better shadows, better spacing. Everything's way tidier. If we just take a look at all of them, they look much more professional. And all of this is just practice and time. Now there's a bit that I'll discuss about how to practice to develop your skills later on in the video, and that is pretty critical, but once you've mastered that, just give it time and you will be up and running in no time. Websites just looking absolutely way better than they used to compared to stuff like this. So that's number 1, patience and time, and you will get better if you study how I tell you to study it later on in the video. For the second of the 5 steps on this list to become a CSS god, I've opened up a project to demonstrate. Now this is more of a mentality that you want to embrace, and it's basically to start thinking about every website we ever make as Tetris. Everything on the page that we style, that we arrange, that we lay out can be broken down into rows or columns and subsequent nested rows and columns. Each of these is just a div, and we can use flex displays and flex containers to create our rows and subsequent columns, either at the same level, one within another, and essentially building our web page is just stacking them together as if it were actually Tetris. So in this example right here, these 2 items are in a row. Everything in here is inside of a column. These items are a row of elements. This is a sub row within a row, so on and so forth. And a really cool way that you can get a picture of how this goes on is if you come into a code base and find the index.css or the style sheet. If you use this asterisk selector, you can select absolutely everything, and we can give it a border of 1 pixel solid black, like so, and we can use the important key, and if we save that, now we can see borders applied to absolutely everything. Now the cool thing about this is that it allows us to see what containers we have going on. So here we have a row. These are 2 elements in a row, where this one has a flex of 1. It's a flex row to take up most of the row. Now in here, the outer box is a column. We have a column of items where each item is a row. The circular border is the row of items. This one takes up a majority of the space, and the end one is a sub row. It's a row of items within a row. And so once again, you can see how it's just like packing a truck, packing a dishwasher, playing Tetris. We're just using rows and columns to fit things together. So whenever you think about a web page, you just want to make sure that you're thinking about the display in terms of relational rows and columns that you can use to fit everything together. And that's just divs or containers that you wrap your HTML tags in. Obviously, you would want to remove this style at the end, but while you're building out your web pages, it can be a great practice just to apply this border to everything so you can get a picture of how things are spaced out. Now that's 2 down. We have 3 more to go, and then we'll touch on how I would recommend practicing to develop your CSS skills. And number 3 on our list is responsivity. Now, if you're not familiar, responsivity is a web page's ability to display on different screen sizes. A good example of responsivity is with this website. When I bring the screen size down, it adjusts as the dimensions of the device change so that it is responsive. Now, responsivity of your web pages is critical. When I was reviewing candidates for a software engineering job, if I'm looking at your websites and they're unresponsive, that is a red flag. And the number one strategy you can use to make sure your websites are always responsive is to design for mobile first. I cannot emphasize this enough. Basically, how this works is when I'm designing, I first create the mobile layout. That way I can guarantee it will work on every single screen size because they only get bigger, so I'm never going to have content overflowing the web page. Here we can see even the navigation down the bottom of the web page adjusts depending on the dimensions of the screen. So it's super important to maintain responsivity of your websites by first designing on a mobile layout. Now, number 4 on our list directly runs off number 3, and it's to memorize your breakpoints. Breakpoints are the widths or dimensions of your page at which the styling changes or updates to retain responsivity. So here we can see as I reach a particular width, we go from having a column layout to having a 2-column layout. We have this column and this column. Now, if you don't have them memorized to the top of your head, I would absolutely recommend that you do. And I personally like to use 3 breakpoints. I have a small, medium, and a large breakpoint. And the specific values I like to use for these breakpoints is the small one is 640 pixels at width. The medium is 768 pixels in width, and the large one is 1024 pixels. Those are the 3 breakpoints that I always design for, and we can use these breakpoints inside of our CSS. If we scroll down the bottom here in this example, here we have what's known as a media query. All the default code above is for the mobile display. It's designed mobile first, and then we have the media query, which basically says if the minimum width criteria is met, so we are above a 640 pixel page width, then we can update the styles and assume these new bigger values. Now, interesting fact, if you didn't actually know this, when websites were historically made before the age of media queries, you would have a mobile website and you would have a desktop website. You might remember some websites had m.facebook.com, for example. That meant that there were 2 websites depending on the device width that would get displayed. Now we don't have to do that. We have one website that can adjust to the varying display widths using the media queries. You could have 3 of them ideally, 1 for each of the breakpoints I said earlier. 640 pixels is the smallest breakpoint. Anything below that is the styles above. Then we move up to the 768 pixel breakpoint, and then we have the 1024 for the larger and above screens. Memorize those values and use them in every project and design mobile first. Now, the last step on our list before we dive into strategies you can use to improve your CSS over time and become a CSS god is CSS.com. This is essentially a CSS playground that I recommend you have a fiddle with. Experiment with styles and just go crazy. Here, if we come down the page and hover over an item, we can see the selectors available for that item. So that's an H2, that's an H3. And then what we can do is we can come into this text box up the top. I can write out some CSS for that. I can say color is white. And now if we scroll down, we can see that that style has been applied. Equally, I could just select everything in this entire document and I could set the color to be white. I could change the background color to not be badass and instead be hashtag 030615. And it's going to adjust live. So that's super cool. It's something you can try. Equally, we could select the H1 and in here I could say font size is 40 rem. And now that has absolutely blown up our page. So this is a really cool way that you can dive into it, experiment with different styles and see what works. Equally, the challenge is actually to style this web page and make it look good. There's a whole lot of stuff in here that you can practice styling, and I'd recommend giving that a shot. So those are the 5 steps. The first one was practice and be patient. Number 2 was to apply borders to everything and think always in terms of containers and Tetris when you're spacing out your web pages. Number 3 was to design your websites for a mobile device width first and then move up to bigger screen sizes using media queries. Number 4 was to memorize the breakpoints so that your page adjustments are optimized to different screen widths. And number 5 is to practice on Jank CSS. See if you can make this page look good. If you can, take a screenshot, share with me. I'd love to see it. Now, the last thing I talked about sharing was the method I used to improve my CSS over time and go from building cringe websites like this one to much cleaner designs like this. And the strategy is very much incorporated into the practice that I said before. Essentially, what I would do is every time I came across a cool website, the ones that come to mind are nuxt.com. I think they had an old version, v2.nuxt.com. See, look at that, it sticks with me. Another one that I liked is Vercel. I preferred their old website. I would see a design that I really enjoyed. For example, I thought this was super cool, and I would leave that web page open until I had built out the components and incorporated them into my own website, not copying them directly, but taking some inspiration. For example, this shadow here and this feature is a design that was inspired by a Three.js tutorial, if I can find it. Just here we can see the feature that was the inspiration for that button. It's a nice slick button. I really like the look of it. I wanted to use it in my project and have something similar. So I looked at it, I inspected the tab on the browser, I found that particular element, I checked for how they'd done it, I looked at the box shadow right here, for example, and then I applied it to a button or an element in my own project. I learned how that element worked, and then I had it for access later. This style element right here is something that was inspired by a previous version of the Vercel webpage right here. And now I'm not saying you should copy the web pages directly, but learning one or two elements from different websites and trying to incorporate them into your own sites is a brilliant way to practice and develop your CSS skills, your abilities, and your design style. Even better if you can keep a catalog of all the websites that you like for inspiration and designs in future. Anyway, that's the whole video. That's everything you need to know to become a CSS god. If you've enjoyed the video, smash the like and subscribe buttons. Don't want those CSS goblins to come and curse you with bad websites for 10 years. Catch you guys later. Peace. Learning to code? If so, be sure to check out the Learn to Code roadmap or dive straight in with these videos. That's a good one.